He was once hailed as the most desirable man on the planet, a sex symbol whose raw power and smouldering presence redefined what it meant to be a star. From A Streetcar Named Desire to The Godfather, Marlon Brando didn't just act. He embodied every role, shaking Hollywood to its core and leaving audiences breathless. His name alone carried the weight of genius, rebellion, and irresistible magnetism. Women adored him, men admired him, and critics crowned him the greatest actor of his generation. And yet, when the curtain fell, Brando's life was not one of glamour but of exile. Behind the lights and applause lay a childhood scarred by neglect, a family plagued by tragedy, and a man who pushed away the very industry that once worshipped him. In the end, the icon who could command millions chose silence, retreating to a lonely island in the Pacific where the world's applause could no longer reach him. How does a man who once held Hollywood in the palm of his hand end up a recluse, haunted by his own demons? This is the untold story of Marlon Brando, his rise, his fall, and the unbearable solitude of genius. Marlon Brando was born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1924, into a home already marked by turbulence. His father was distant, often cold, while his mother, a talented actress in her own right, struggled with alcoholism. For young Marlon, love was inconsistent, affection fleeting. That instability planted a restlessness in him, a need to break free from silence and disappointment. As a boy, Brando found refuge in mimicry. He could imitate teachers, friends, even animals with uncanny precision. It wasn't just play, it was survival, a way to shape chaos into control. School never held his attention, but drama did. When he moved to New York in the 1940s, the world shifted. Under the guidance of Stella Adler at the Actors Studio, Brando discovered the power of method acting, digging into raw emotion, channeling truth rather than performance. No one could have imagined that this troubled young man, carrying wounds from a fractured childhood, would soon become the face of a new era in American cinema. The boy who once ran from pain was about to turn that pain into art, changing Hollywood forever. When Marlon Brando stepped onto the stage as Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951, audiences were stunned. His raw energy, his brooding sensuality, it wasn't just acting, it was a revolution. Men in crisp suits and women in pearl necklaces suddenly saw something new, an actor who could strip away artifice and reveal the nerve beneath. Hollywood had found not just a star, but a force of nature. Only 3 years later, Brando cemented his legend with On the Waterfront, 1954. His portrayal of Terry Malloy, the ex-boxer with broken dreams, won him the Academy Award and gave cinema one of its most quoted lines, "I could have been a contender." Brando wasn't performing. He was bleeding truth on screen, redefining masculinity for a generation. Then in 1972 came The Godfather. As Don Vito Corleone, Brando transformed himself completely, his whispering authority and quiet menace captivating the world. The role revived his career, won him another Oscar, and forever linked his name to one of film's greatest masterpieces. Yet even as the world bowed to his genius, shadows began to gather. Applause can hide cracks, but it cannot silence them forever. Off-screen, Marlon Brando's life was as stormy as his most dramatic roles. He was famously elusive in love, his name linked to countless women, from actresses and models to quiet romances away from the spotlight. Brando fathered more than 10 children, though his relationships with them were often complicated, marked by distance, conflict, and attempts at reconciliation that never fully healed. Marriage did not bring him stability. His unions were brief and tumultuous, each collapsing under the weight of infidelity, fame, and his own restless spirit. Friends recalled Brando as a man who longed for intimacy yet feared being trapped by it, forever caught between desire and retreat. Family should have been his refuge, but instead it became the stage for his deepest turmoil. His children grew up in the shadow of a legend, but also in the chaos of scandal and fractured bonds. For Brando, love was never simple. It was a battleground of passion, mistakes, and regrets. And from that very battleground would come tragedies so deep that they scarred him for the rest of his life. The storms outside Hollywood were nothing compared to the ones within his own home. The cracks in Marlon Brando's world widened into devastating breaks. In 1990, his son Christian was convicted of manslaughter after shooting Dag Drollett, the boyfriend of Brando's daughter Cheyenne. The trial was a media circus. dragging Brando's private anguish into public view. He appeared in court, frail and broken, pleading for leniency, but the damage was irreversible. His family name, once synonymous with brilliance, was now tied to tragedy. Just 5 years later, the nightmare deepened. Cheyenne, haunted by depression and grief, took her own life in Tahiti. For Brando, it was an unbearable wound. Friends said he never recovered, retreating further into isolation. The man who once electrified audiences now seemed consumed by sorrow. Hollywood, too, had turned cold. Once celebrated, Brando's reputation for being difficult on set, unpredictable, demanding, even combative, left him with fewer opportunities. Roles dwindled, and when he did appear, critics often dismissed his performances. The contrast was stark. The titan of The Godfather reduced to a shadow of his former self. Brando's downfall was not a single fall, but a slow unravelling. A genius crushed under the weight of grief, controversy, and his own defiance of Hollywood. By the late years of his life, Marlon Brando had withdrawn almost completely from the world. On his private island of Tetiaroa in French Polynesia, the man once hailed as Hollywood's brightest star now lived in silence, surrounded not by red carpets or flashing cameras, but by endless waves and rustling palms. From the outside, it seemed like paradise. Yet for Brando, it was exile. A self-imposed distance from the industry, the fame, and even the family that had brought him both glory and despair. Those who visited recalled an aging man burdened by loss. He spoke softly, sometimes not at all, his once powerful presence reduced to a weary figure sitting alone in dimly lit rooms. Memories of Christian's trial, of Cheyenne's tragic death, of roles lost and friendships broken, all of it lingered like ghosts he could never escape. At night, the ocean wind would carry through the open windows, but it brought no comfort. The applause of millions had faded, leaving only the echo of what once was. The greatest actor of his generation now faced the harshest role of all, living with the silence of his own solitude. Do you remember the first time you saw Marlon Brando as Don Vito Corleone, his hushed voice and commanding presence filling the screen? For many, that moment remains unforgettable. Even as his later years were marked by scandal and sorrow, Brando's artistry never lost its power. He reshaped the craft of acting, bringing raw vulnerability and authenticity that inspired generations. Without Brando, there would be no Al Pacino, no Robert De Niro, no modern school of performance as we know it. His legacy extends far beyond cinema. Brando was also outspoken about social justice, refusing his Oscar for The Godfather in protest of Hollywood's portrayal of Native Americans. It was a bold move, controversial at the time, but it revealed his refusal to separate art from conscience. Though he spent his final years in seclusion, audiences continue to rediscover his brilliance through On the Waterfront, A Streetcar Named Desire, and The Godfather. His image lives on, not just as a sex symbol, but as a trailblazer who dared to be different. Brando's story is both triumph and tragedy, but his legacy ensures one truth: his impact will never fade. Marlon Brando's life is a haunting reminder that greatness often carries a heavy cost. He rose higher than almost any actor before him, forever altering the way cinema tells its stories. Yet behind the brilliance was a man wounded by childhood scars, family tragedies, and the crushing weight of fame. In the end, Brando chose isolation, retreating to his island, far from the cameras that once immortalized him. His genius was undeniable, but so was his loneliness. What do we take from his journey? Perhaps that talent and acclaim cannot shield us from pain, and that even legends are vulnerable to the same struggles of love, loss, and regret. Brando's story asks us to look beyond the glamour and see the human being, the fragile heart inside the myth. And still, his light endures. His performances remain immortal, teaching us that truth on screen can move generations. His influence echoes in every actor who dares to bare their soul. If Marlon Brando's story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe genius always comes with solitude? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so the memory of legends like Brando will never fade.